Hi, welcome to the Home Tech Plus channel. Please be sure to hit the subscribe and like button. And today we're going to be talking about replacing a water supply to a refrigerator ice maker and removing an old style saddle valve and replacing that with a quarter turn valve. And we're going to talk about the method for using a slip T, and we're also going to discuss why you want to do that. Watch for my follow-up video on what to do if you've purchased a new refrigerator and the company won't install the refrigerator and hook up the water supply line unless you have a valve behind the refrigerator. So oftentimes they'll refuse to hook up the line if there is not a shutoff valve directly behind the refrigerator. This is a typical example of an in-wall box with a stop or a shutoff valve. This case has a nylon or a plastic tubing. You may have a stainless steel braided line coming from this, and then the other end would terminate onto the refrigerator solenoid valve. In this case, this example, it's got an inline filter behind the refrigerator. So we will discuss that in a future video. But this is a typical saddle valve. Typically, this is located in the basement, and it's clamped onto either a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch pipe on the cold water. It's often located fairly close to where the refrigerator is and the floor up above in the kitchen. So this style of valve, called a saddle valve, is very inferior. So this is clamped onto the pipe. You twist the T-handle down until the sharp point pierces the copper pipe, and then when you back it out, it allows water to flow. These get clogged, and that impedes the flow to the ice maker and the water dispenser, and they do require a certain amount of pressure before they'll dispense water properly. So I've removed the saddle valve here, and this is on a 3/4 inch pipe, and we're going to discuss what you need to do to change that to a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch compression valve. So we're going to use a slip T. In this example, we're going on a 3/4 inch pipe, so this is a 3/4 inch slip T. The same would apply for a 1/2 inch. There's another step you have to take if you're doing a 3/4 inch pipe. So here I've cut the 3/4 inch pipe, and I've taken about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of material off the pipe, and I've cut the part out that would be damaged due to the piercing of the copper pipe. So that's important. I have a short real-time video coming up that's going to demonstrate how to install a slip connection. So again, this is the slip T. You can't get a slip T that reduces from 3/4 down to 1/2 inch. If you were able to pull the pipe apart, you could use a standard T like this that would reduce 3/4 to 1/2 inch. Or if it was just a 1/2 inch pipe, it would just be a 1/2 inch on all 3 connections. But oftentimes you don't have the luxury of being able to pull that pipe apart. That's why you have to use a slip T. And then finally, we'll finish the project up with this SharkBite push to connect on the 1/2 inch part and a 1/4 inch compression on the part that goes to the refrigerator that the hose connects to. So I'm demonstrating the proper method for installing a SharkBite slip connection. Now, the purpose of this is to show you a connection for a slip T. In this example, I'm just using a coupler, a slip coupler, and I'm using 1/2 inch, but the same method applies for 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch. And for the purposes of this demonstration of hooking up a refrigerator supply line, and replacing a saddle valve, you're going to have a slip T, and the method is the same for a slip coupler or a slip T. So this is just an example of how the slip connection works. So in this example, I'm using a piece of copper and a piece of PEX. These will work on copper or PEX or CPVC. Now when you buy a slip T or a coupler, it comes with a SharkBite removal tool. I have these tongs, which are inexpensive and very useful. They have a much better tool than this, but if you're just doing a couple things, you don't need to invest in anything other than something like this. Really is a better method than using one of these, but I'll explain how that works. So the first thing I do is you're going to cut the pipe, and generally when you cut the pipe, whether it's a 3/4 or 1/2 inch pipe, when you cut it, you still need to take a little bit of material off of this. So you're going to want to remove about 1 inch of material of the copper pipe, because you've got to have enough to insert the end of this coupler onto the pipe that you're going to. So it's going to go to this mark, and it shows I've marked it at 1 inch for 1/2 inch. For 3/4, it's 1 1/4 inches. So this is my 1 inch mark in this example. And then you have to be able to insert this pipe, all the slip connection onto this pipe far enough so that you can clear this to then insert it over this other pipe where you're connecting to. So you're going to normally take about 1 inch of material off this. So you cut the pipe, and then you're going to have to be able to drop this pipe down and take a little bit more material out of this, because you have to be able to get this pipe back up into position. If the pipes can be pulled apart, then you're golden. But the problem with this is that oftentimes these pipes are in a location where you don't have any way to move the pipes apart. So you have to be able to loosen the connection straps. Like there's going to be straps that are drove in, or straps that are fastened with screws or nails to the bottom of the joist. Generally we're talking about in a basement here. So you have to remove these straps so that you can drop the pipe down. That's very important. You have to be able to get the pipe dropped down, and then this has to be able to go back together in a straight connection. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to insert the slip T, and you're going to push this on here, and you can see that it slipped way past my mark, and that's okay. Then in order to get this onto the pipe, we've now inserted this way up this pipe. You're going to bring the pipe back up, have a straight connection, and then you're going to have to move this connection by releasing the SharkBite connector. So in order to do that, you're going to install these tongs on here. And when you do that, you can move the pipe, and it's going to slide onto this pipe. So this pipe has to be, you have to, it's kind of a trick, because you really have to hold on to this pipe and give it some reinforcement while you slide this on. And then once this is on, it bottoms out, and that's my 1 inch mark. As long as I see that 1 inch mark, I'm good. Sometimes if your mark's not right on, you might cover it up. You're still good, and you can feel this bottom out, and I'll talk about that later. So then once you do that, your connection's good. So these tongs, they only go in one direction, by the way. This is smaller than this end. So that goes, the smaller end goes over the pipe, and then you release it like that. So you can see how easy I can pull this in and out when that's released. So that's the method, whether it's a slip coupler or a slip T, that's the method. And the reason I put the mark in there is that you want to make sure that when if you have to take a certain amount of material out of this pipe, then you want to make sure that this is inserted at least to where your mark is on the pipe. That's putting it down to about here, because you want to have a 1-inch insertion depth. If this pipe terminates somewhere in this area, you're still okay. But the important part is that this connection is bottomed out into the fitting, and this one is at least 1 inch into this area. If it's further, that's okay. Depends on how much material you removed. So you would have this connection done, and this would be a T normally, and you'll see the pictures that I provided. If you're doing this on a 1/2-inch pipe, then this is much easier, because now the next step you're going to do is use a 1/2-inch to a 1/4-inch compression fitting. This is a 1/4 turn SharkBite valve. You would ultimately remove this and discard both of these pieces and this ferrule right here. You don't need that. So in this example, this is a 3/8, but for refrigerator supply, you're going to use a 1/4 inch, and the pictures are provided in my video. I'm just using this because I had this on hand. So you would take a piece of PEX, and you can use copper, but you could take a piece of 1/2-inch PEX at this point, and you would insert the 1/2-inch PEX to the 1-inch mark into your T, and then once you get that there, you'll then take your 1/2-inch to 1/4-inch compression valve and slip that over the PEX until it's bottomed out to your 1-inch mark. Now, when I prep these pipes, I want to talk about this a little bit further. Remove this. Okay. And you see I removed that, and we can reuse this. So that's what's nice about a SharkBite fitting. I like the SharkBite brand. They're more expensive than the other brands that are out there, like a Home Depot brand that they carry, but they're a quality unit. So if you have to use this SharkBite removal tool, it goes over the pipe with the lettering away from the connection. So when this is slipped on and bottomed out, you can feel it bottom out, and that's why I'm talking about this. If you don't feel this bottom out and hear it bottom out, even though you have your mark there, maybe you didn't get it marked right, that has to be bottomed out. If it's not, these can have a potential to leak. But if you have to use this removal tool, this is not an easy process unless you have your hands free to do it. So lots of times I'll use a crescent wrench or adjustable jaw to slide over the pipe, and then place this on here like this, and use that for leverage up against the connection of the SharkBite fitting. You can also take a hammer, and this is really useful when you're doing the slip tee, and you can tap on the crescent wrench here, and that'll tap in this collar, which will release the fitting that will allow it to slip. Now, when I prep these pipes, before I do all this, and I kind of got ahead of myself, I always polish the end. Polish the end of the copper, and in this case, I use a piece of waterproof emery cloth, but sandpaper or any emery cloth will work. After you polish it, clean it off with a rag. You don't want any debris on there. And then it's always good to use some silicone grease. This makes the application so much easier. Without the silicone grease, these things don't want to slide as well as they should. You also, even if you're using PEX, you don't want to clean this in because you don't need to clean PEX like you do copper. And the only reason I clean this up, since I'm not doing a solder joint, the reason I do polish this is that we want to make sure that it's free of any scores or flaws in the pipe. So I always polish that a little bit. And then I use an old knife that I carry to clean the inside of this burr out. So I go around like this and I clean the inside of this burr. And I also use the emery cloth to kind of get a little chamfer on the outside of the pipe. You don't want any burr on the outside of the pipe. The inside of the pipe's not as critical, but I still like to clean that out. Number one, sediment can build up where that lip is for the copper. But you want to chamfer this because you don't want to damage the O-ring that's inside the fitting. So when you slide that on, it makes for easy installation and there's no burr there. I've also listed or shown you some devices for cutting the pipe, the stuff that I like to use. Now for a 3/4 inch pipe, this is really the best thing you could buy. It's called an auto cut. It's made by General Pipe Cleaners and it's got an arrow for the direction that you twist it. This is for a 3/4. They do make them for 1/2 inch. I use this for 3/4 usually in all cases. I'll usually use this, and this is just a Home Depot's brand, but it works well for a 1/2 inch pipe. And the only reason I carry this and don't use an auto cut for that is lots of times if I'm working on a toilet supply line, I don't have the luxury of being able to clamp on the auto cut. So on laboratory faucets or small spaces, this seems to work a lot better. And this is pretty self-explanatory. You put it on there, you twist it around a few times, and every so often you tighten this to put more pressure until eventually it cuts through. So you can use these for PEX pipe, but they do make a cutting tool for PEX. They make several different ones, but they make an inexpensive one. Like this. And this is made by SharkBite also. This is pretty inexpensive and it works on 3/4 inch pipe as well. Okay, so the other thing that you can do when you're cutting the pipe down in the basement to do this slip connection is use a hacksaw. I love this mini hacksaw. This is a Cobalt brand from Lowe's, and you can also get replacement blades for this. This thing is easy to get in tight spaces and it works great. So that's a really useful tool. This is another device that you can use for cutting larger pipe like 3/4 inch or 1 inch. Lots of times this is used for conduit, but this will also work. You just don't always have the luxury to get this to rotate completely around because of space confinements. There may be a joist in the way or something like that. So that's why I prefer these methods. All right. Thank you. Here we've installed the 3/4 inch slit tee. And after it was installed, we've had to reduce that down to 1/2 inch. So I've installed a 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch coupler, reducing coupler, with a short piece of PEX pipe. And here you can see I went from 3/4 to the coupler and then followed that up with a piece of 1/2 inch PEX and then finally terminated the 1/2-inch shark bite quarter turn valve that then goes to the 1/4-inch compression fitting. And then we've terminated a stainless steel braided hose on the end of that and fed that up through the floor to the back of the refrigerator. These come in 12-inch, 60-inch or 5-foot, or 120-inch, which is 10-foot. And make sure you get a hose long enough that you can pull the refrigerator out at least 4 feet, so you got enough clearance to get behind the refrigerator and make the connection in the back. Be sure not to over tighten the compression part of these valves or on the back of the solenoid valve that's on the refrigerator. You just snug those up. You don't want to damage them. Also, before you connect to the back of the refrigerator, make sure you flush the line into a bucket for about 15 to 30 seconds. You want to clear all the debris from that line or you'll have a problem in your ice maker or filter. So that's very important. Please leave any questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. I hope you found this was informational. Thank you for watching.